MSCS domain transcription factor, PEA3, which is regulated by the interplay of summoylation and ubiquination. Dr. Guo is currently senior lecturer in hematology and transfusion at Manchester Metropolitan University, and he focuses on human iPSCs disease model and a new drug discovery for blood and neurological disorders. And this method targets it's useful for late onset Alzheimer's disease with human iPS macrophage microglial disease model. So without further ado, I leave you with Dr. Guo. Thank you very much.
Yeah, good afternoon. I think maybe in Mexico will be a good morning.
Good morning.
And yeah, so can you see the screen?
Yes, we can see it fine. Okay. Thank you.
So I'm going to start. You know, now I'm happy to talk about the stem cells for regenerative medicine. I know it's quite a new area, and maybe everybody know the stem cells, and especially lots of clinic you see from the website stem cells, but we are talking about is the real stem cells, not like the clinic now they're using. And for this lecture the outcome of this lecture will be, the first I would like to let you know that what is stem cells and what is pluripotency and what is pluripotent stem cell, including ES cells, we call it's embryonic stem cell, and iPS cells, induced pluripotent stem cells. And finally, with more time, will be talk about what is iPS cells and their clinical application, potential in medicine. Okay, we all know life begins at fertilization. Like you can see this picture, from the fertilized egg, one cell become two, then four, and then become we call inner cell mass. So this become a fetus and then become the adult. So what is stem cell? So you will stem cell, their character is first is self-renew. They can copy themselves. The secondary is very important, is proliferation, limitless proliferation, not like the adult stem cells. We talk about these pluripotent stem cells will be limitless proliferation, and very important is differentiation. Differentiation means can become specialized cells. So there's a stem cell jargon, and what is potency? Potency means there's a way to measure how many types of specialized cells for stem cell to make. And pluripotent means these cells can make all types of the specialized cells in the body, like embryonic stem cells, and like I'm going to talk about is the induced pluripotent stem cells. We also call iPS cells. So multipotent stem cells can make multiple types of specialized cells. Take an example like mesenchymal stem cells. They only can make several types of cells, specialized cells, like hematopoietic stem cells. They can generate red cells and white cells and different, only, but they cannot make all types of cells. So ES cells, we call ES cells, actually it's called embryonic stem cells. Everybody know that, we already mentioned, it can become one cell can become a fetus, okay? So ES can finally differentiate into unipotent stem cells, we call adult stem cells. That means they can generate, take example like heart, and also neuron, and also immune system or blood system, okay? They can different to this type of system cells. So, but the important is the blastocyst, these cells we call inner cell mass, they can produce the, finally will generate a fetus. So, but we know the embryonic cells is very useful to can generate any type of cells for regenerative medicine. However, there's a big issue ethic issue. We cannot use it for research, even for research, and for very limited for the application. So this is the problem. So, but there is a groundbreaking news. In 2012, the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine awarded two famous scientists. One is Shinya Yamanaka from Japan, and one is from Cambridge University, UK, John Gardy. The two scientists, they using their research, can make mature cells be reprogrammed to become the pluripotent stem cells. It's called induced pluripotent stem cells. So we call iPS cells. This groundbreaking discovery have completely changed our view of the development and cellular specialization. So before, we always think that stem cells can differentiate into specialized cells, mature cells cannot back. So this discovery is like somebody call is the equivalent of antibiotics and vaccine in the past century. So this is so important. So how induced pluripotent stem cells have come true? So how they do that? So the background is cellular differentiation has long been considered as a permanent one-way process. So before we think it cannot come back. So, but Shinya Yamanaka in 2006, he published on the Cell paper using the MEF cells, mouse MEF cells can generate iPS cells. So, and iPS cells is unlike ES cells. iPS cells are not derived from embryo. So, but instead created from mature cells in the lab through a process we call reprogramming. So, but this discovery is based on very important three discovery. One is John Garden in 1962, he cloned frog. So I think not too many people know the cloning of frog. So, and his colleague in Walmart, so he cloned Dolly. Everybody know Dolly in Scotland, in UK. However, not too many people know the cloning of frog. But actually, the first theory is raised by John Garden. So, and also very important, another discovery is about the embryonic stem cell line derived from human blastocyst, because this system can make the scientist from Japan, Yamanaka, can culture the cells. So this is a very important three milestone. I call them milestone. Okay, so now we look at the Yamanaka. He was an orthopedic doctor. From orthopedic doctor to stem cell biologist, he won the Nobel Prize shared with John Garden. John Garden, I think because he did the first theory, confirmed the theory about the reprogramming in 1962. But Yamanaka, based on the hypothesis, is because we know in the stem cells, ES stem cells, there are different genes expressed compared with the mature cells. So he chose from the about 100 different genes is different between embryonic stem cells and the mature cells. So he chose 24 possible genes as a candidate genes for the research. And actually, we know lots of people works on this. They know this difference, but nobody think transfected these genes into the mature cells. So he did this. Is one of his students is called Takahashi. So the 24 genes, how they do that? So they designed an experiment using FBX15 selection system. This is gene is only expressed is important for the maintenance of the stem cells. They use this. That means this gene only can be expressed in the stem cell. So they fuse this gene with this beta-galactosidase together, they can produce color. So they transfect into the MEF cells, mature cells. If these cells, because they get a antibiotic resistant gene, so only can be survive unless they are become the stem cell. So that means you can see they transfect 24 genes. We can see the stem cell colonies. This is a really exciting experiment. And also they look and the microscope is very similar. 24 genes become very similar with the ES cells. So, and they further do the experiment because they want to know minimum how many genes can be used for the reprogramming. So this is a very clever, idea. One of his student, Takahashi, he took one by one, first transfer all the genes into the 24 genes into the cells, then take one by one. You can see 1 to 24, some they take out, they cannot form the colony. So finally they find 10 genes. You can see these 10 genes very important for the colony formation. So these 10 genes very similar with the ES cells. So, and also 4, finally they stratified. The 4 is so important. The 4 is similar with the 10. So they focus on the 4 genes. Okay, we can see only the 4 is important. OCT4, SOX2, KLF4, and CMYC. So this is the Nobel Prize. Why they won the Nobel Prize? So it's very, very useful. So you will ask whether you can do that. Yes, you can do in the lab. Okay, how do we use the 4 genes to make the iPS cells? Okay, we get the cells from human body. Usually we're using skin biopsy to get a fibroblast. Okay, peripheral blood cells, T lymphocyte, or using the hair follicle, just using the hair, you can get the cells, and also use the urine, renal tubercular cells. Actually, any type of mature cells can be used for the cell to start the iPS cell. But this is very easy to get it. Okay, then transfect the 4 genes, or now we realize there's other gene also can be, but important is the 4 basic gene can make the iPS cells. Okay, so what are the potential for application of iPS cells? What is the tools? Okay, the tool you can see iPS cells is can use for the research and modeling disease, drug development, and drug toxicity, transplantation medicine. So, and we can see for using for regenerative medicine, you can make a neuron, you can make cardiac cells and hepatic cells, and using for toxicology and using for regenerative medicine. So now the worldwide, lots of people to using for the clinical trial. We can see now already 54 using for clinical trial. So, and before they using the ES cells, but now more using the iPS cells. You can see this worldwide in US and in different countries, we can see. And now I would like to, how do we disease modeling? Because I'm working the disease modeling, we call disease in a dish, okay? You can generate this. And iPSCs from patient can represent early stage of disease. And we using this as a model can screen the drugs and also using for disease pathology. So now directed differential iPS cells into hematopoietic stem cells and ATP cells. This I'm working on. So that means we can make blood. So this is we get from the skin can generate myeloid differentiation, and they were using 3 methods. So from iPS to myeloid proteinase cells with embryo body method, we're using this way, we can generate, you can see this what iPS looks like using Hydrogel. Then finally we generate the myeloid cells. Using these myeloid cells, we can see that this is embryo body. They're different from normal, from disease. Then we can generate the blood cells. This is very interesting. This is normal control, and this is leukemia. You can see lots of different things. These leukemia cells. So we call these are children leukemia cells. So we're using this as a model, can generate, and using this, we can see the blood cells. Okay, this is we made in the lab, can make red cells and also leukemia cells. We're using this as a model. We're using for the drug screening. You can see this is CD33, CD34. We can find this the leukemia cells different from the normal control, and using this way we can using for drug screening. We using there's a called correction. This is because very hard to treat disease. We're using this from a patient. We can screen this drug is effective to kill the leukemia cells. Then we test it in the patient, and basically we're using this disease model. You can see it's no-name patients. This is disease, and also some cells can become leukemia. So differentiating into myeloid cells, and these myeloid cells can be used for discovery proteomics. We already published this. Then we using this for drug screening and targeted drug screen, and then we find the correction can use for the patient, and we definitely using this way, we confirm this with the real patient leukemia cells. So this is the very useful method, and stop at this. I want take some questions if you want to ask. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Thank you very much, Professor Wall. Dr. Mendez asks us, I have a question from a chronotherapy point of view. Do you consider different times for drug taking? Is it important to take into consideration the peak of activity of metabolism during the day? Maybe she's asking Dr. Jane Serginson.
Okay.
But we have another question, and I believe he is asking about how children who are born with leukemia.
Okay, yeah. The children, well, we work on the leukemia. This is children leukemia. This is called Noonan syndrome. I think the character is the children, because there's a mutation, gene mutation, only one amino acid difference. They can cause there's called PTPN11. This gene is very important for the development. So some children can cause this is Noonan syndrome, and this gene mutation they can also cause leukemia. So we take from the skin, because they got the mutation, we can generate the blood cells also got this mutation. So this mutation we recapitulate. We make the leukemia cells is using iPS cells. So iPS differentiate into blood. This blood show the character of the leukemia. So this this is the children because there's a mutation. Yeah, that's why we're using this model.
Exactly, because you can see, you can study it, as you say, in a dish, and then see, study and find different, either basic information about the cells or treatments, as you specified. I had just a question that it was very interesting to see the development of these, the possibility of this reprogramming. I worked in transplantation, neural transplantation at some point, and we were developing cell lines, that could be used for transplantation. So, but they originated from embryonic tissue, and they had to be transformed, they had to be immortalized, and many, many steps. And now you have the real thing, you can make whatever you need from a dish. So it's a great step. I had one more question about skin grafts. Is that the first use of this type of cells? Would you think that it was the first?
Yeah, you know, the Yamanik, they first using the skin fibroblast, but now lots of different way. You know, you can using the the blood is also very easy to using blood T cells, and also using somebody using CD34 hematopoietic stem cells, very easy to get from the blood. So we because these cells can be proliferate, so can survive in the culturing. Then we transfer genes in the dish, so they can become the iPSC cells. Yeah.
Well, I don't think we have any more questions in the chat right now. So I want to thank you very much for your presentation. Very, very nice description of the history. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'm going to introduce now Dr. Araida Hidalgo. She's going to speak about scaffolds and bioreactors for regenerative medicine. So we're all, again, talking about regeneration. And she uses 3D in vitro models. So Dr. Araida Hidalgo graduated from a Bachelor in Engineering and Biotechnology from the UPIBI at the Instituto Politécnico Nacional in Mexico. She worked in quality assurance and clinical trials in Schering-Plough and as a business manager in Altec, before pursuing a PhD in pharmacy at the University of Nottingham. She then joined a BBSRC project at Keele University and University of Manchester as postdoctoral researcher, before joining Manchester Metropolitan University as an academic. She is currently senior lecturer, program leader of the Integrated Master in Biomedical Science, and departmental international lead for life sciences. Her research focuses on stem cells, biomaterials, bioreactors, and bioimaging for orthopedic and cardiovascular regenerative medicine. Her group record includes basic science and industrial work, as well as publications with national and international teams. And she's been funded by British and Mexican research councils and the British Council. So welcome, Dr. Araida.
Thank you very much, Professor Giordano, for the introduction. And a pleasure to talk to you again now about science, not about Manchester, which you definitely have to come to visit us, but of course about science as well. So unfortunately, the time I have is not enough to tell you all about the scaffolds, bioreactors, and bioimaging as much as I would like. So it'll have to be, I'll try to cover as much as possible, unfortunately, without going as much into the detail. But hopefully you'll have a really good idea of what is happening now in this field if you're not already familiar. So I didn't mention in my title the application, but if you look at this map, I'm hoping that you will be able to identify rapidly what is the area that I'm focusing most on. And of course, it's cardiovascular disease. And it's expected that, well, before COVID, cardiovascular disease was the #1 cause of death in the world, in most of the countries, apart from infectious diseases, of course, in Africa and in Mexico, and of course, liver cancer in China. But the rest of the world pretty much see heart disease as or was the global challenge before 2020. And that is why we are working on this real clinical need. What do we need? We need biomaterials for regenerative medicine therapies, but also for 3D cardiovascular models. So we've heard a lot of what is happening with stem cells, thanks to Dr. Guo. And we also heard about what is happening in terms of pharmacogenetics and development of drugs. So we can see that the platforms, the 3D platforms that we are building with stem cells and biomaterials, they are not going to be only used as strategies to cure a disease, but also as a model to test drugs before they go into an animal model, which is some of the steps that clinical trial follow. So what are biomaterials? If you're not familiar with biomaterials, these are non-viable materials that interact with biological systems, hence the bio. Now, these materials have to be compatible. They have not to elicit any appropriate, any biological response. They cannot be toxic, injurious, or produce immunological response in any living tissues. Of course, many years ago, actually the first biomaterials were, well, the first biomaterials were developed with the Aztecs and the Egyptians when they started using gold for dental implants. But the modern era of biomaterials was developed in the 1970s, where chemistry really took over with all the new polymers, and we started being able to play actually and tailor to the conditions and properties that we wanted for these materials. And on those days, we were happy not to elicit any response. Of course, now we are more advanced and we want more out of these biomaterials. The important message here that you have to consider is that biomaterial is the block of material. That is the actual solid material that you're using. And that cannot be used in the regenerative medicine applications, because when we want to use it as part of a graft, we know that either we are delivering cells or drugs, and we need a porous structure, very similar to our organs. All our tissues are porous structures. So a solid block is not going to be good enough. And that is why we produce, using biomaterials, we produce scaffolds. Scaffolds are going to be those 3D structures with very defined macro and micro architecture to mimic the in vivo tissue. Now, the materials that we can use, the biomaterials, could be either synthetic or natural. Synthetic, as I mentioned, we have many polymers that we can tailor to degradation profile or mechanical properties. And that is very useful when we're trying to mimic a tissue or an organ. Unfortunately, that is not as good when you want to put cells, seed cells on these materials. They immediately get, this is not a biological environment, and hence they will not attach, let alone survive and thrive in the material. So the advantages of the synthetic really is that mechanically you can do whatever you want, but they will not mimic the cellular environment. The contrary to the natural materials, which of course they will mimic the cellular environments, they will be expressing those motifs or those extracellular matrix proteins that the cell can recognize, but they will not have the mechanical properties or the degradation that we are looking into. So what is the answer? Of course, is a composite, where we have the best of both ways, of both worlds. We have the mechanical properties and we have that mimicking of the physiological environment. If you're not familiar with the tissue engineering cycle, I'm just going to guide you through it. We start, of course, with a clinical need. So we have a patient that has either a disease, could be a genetic disease, something that we'll need to consider later on, but a genetic disease, or could be because of trauma, because of an accident. But there is a clinical need. And hence we harvest cells from the patient, stem cells. We expand them in the lab to make sure that we have a good number of cells to work with. And then we're going to mix them with either cytokines or growth factors, and we're going to give them a home. And that home is this 3D porous scaffold. This is going to be the mechanical, physical surface where the cells can attach and thrive. And we are going to allow them to grow to several weeks, depending on the application, in a very controlled environment in the lab, looking after temperature, looking after nutrients and waste. And after these weeks, is going to be ready to be implanted back into our patient to replace the clinical need. That is the circle of the tissue engineering. And of course, now you are experts on stem cells, thanks to the previous talk with Professor Bauchiang. I can tell you that in addition to that tissue engineering cycle, we see an example of the cardiac application. We have an injured heart, and from the injured heart, we could get cells from the patient, stem cells. Now, I did mention we need to be cautious whether it's a genetic disease that is causing this problem. Of course, if it's a genetic disease, the cells that we're going to be harvesting will be encoding for the same problem or the same error in the cells. So it might be necessary either to modify the cells or to harvest from another donor. So it's not always possible to use cells. And of course, as mentioned, depending on the fragility of your patient, it might not be possible to harvest from your patient. And even when you harvest from your patient, they will behave very differently, whether it's a female or a male patient, whether it's an elderly or a young patient and healthy. But Best case scenario, we get a really good number of stem cells. We are going to mix them with either nanoparticles, I said cytokines, growth factors. We are going to give them that scaffold, and that scaffold is going to be used to have a construct. So the construct is the scaffold plus the cells, is the mini organ, the mini patch that will have physiological functions similar to the original one, and we can use it as a cardiac patch. And you can see here the different components that we have. Of course, you have cells, as you can see, a cell. We are going to have the scaffold, and the scaffolds can be from different biomaterials, as we mentioned briefly. If you recognize this, you can recognize the graphene. I did mention, remember the hexagon, lots of carbon, and in the of course the graphene is carbon, but lots of graphene work in Manchester. And I said we have to provide the right environment. We want to make sure that these cells will have the best conditions to thrive, and that is why we use bioreactors that we can have for different stimulation. Now, there are different scaffolds and materials that we can process. One of them is injectable scaffolds. Injectable scaffolds are very useful. They are thermoresponsive. That means that after obtaining them at room temperature, they behave as liquids, which means that you can handle them very easily. But they gellify at physiological temperature. So when you are preparing in the lab at room temperature, you can handle, you can mix, you can prepare. And when you inject into your patient at physiological temperature, of course, it's going to be at 36.7, it's going to start gelating, which means that these could be used either as fillers or also as vehicles to deliver stem cells or drugs that will not go into circulation, but will get trapped in the site where you are injecting them. To produce these extracellular, decellularized hydrogels, these thermoresponsive jellies, we take the original tissue. So in this case, I'll give you an example of bone. We can also work with bone in the lab. We take bone, we break it into smaller pieces. Then we powderize it and we wash it with different detergents and chemicals to obtain that gel. By doing this, we remove, of course, the cells, but we also remove the minerals and the lipids, and we only leave the extracellular matrix that is going to give us the support. Another method to process these scaffolds is, of course, 3D printing. You might be familiar with 3D printing, not only for regenerative medicine, but also for many other applications, including industrial applications. In this case, we need to think, what is the application that we want? What are the mechanical properties of that? If I am thinking on a cardiac patch, do I need a very stiff, hard material, like if I was going to use it to replace a piece of bone? Even though they're both going to go into a patient, the function and the mechanical requirements are very different. And in this case, I'll give you an example on cardiac applications. And for cardiac applications, you think of a flexible contractile material muscle that will be pumping and that you don't want it to get tired or to fail because of fatigue of the material. And that is why we started working with polymers, polyurethane urea. Polyurethane urea is an elastomer that you can stretch as many times as you want without failing or without losing the shape. And we can use inverse 3D printing for this by using the cells as well and seeding them. And you can see that it's a very reproducible, of course, 3D printing, the advantages, a very reproducible, tunable process that we have. Now, I mentioned at the beginning, it was good enough just to have some materials that would not damage the patient. Right now, what we need are smart materials. And those smart materials are the ones that are not going to not damage the patient, but also are going to provide additional support for the remodeling, regeneration, and healing of the organ or the tissue that we are trying to help. One of these smart properties is the antimicrobial properties. And we know that the use of antibiotics has been challenged because the overuse will induce antibiotic resistance in some microorganisms. And that is why we are looking for alternatives. So we have some research working with essential oils, trying to go to natural sources rather than using antibiotics. And we have proved that this could be used to develop smart biomaterials with antimicrobial properties. Equally, another molecule, another particular that we have been using for smart materials, graphene oxide. And graphene oxide, you might know about the electrical properties. They are very widely used in the electronics and smart chips components. But of course, as part of these regenerative medicine biomaterials, we can also use them. Not only because of the electrical properties that will be very useful for applications that need electrical impulses, and you immediately can think of two, cardiac and neural. They do use electrical impulses and transmitters, but also the shape of graphene as a flake, it also helps as a physical antimicrobial. So potentially we can have a really strong smart biomaterials when we start working graphene oxide. And one of the properties as well is that when we mix it with polymers, we can have a very flexible material for cardiac patch or even for blood vessel replacements. Now, do we need a dynamic system? Well, unless you can think of many systems in the human body that do not move at all and do not have any stimulation, yes, we do need. The target is to mimic as much as possible the physiological environment where these cells remodel. And that is why, if you think of bone, of course, we're going to be walking. And when we walk, there's pressure on the bone, but there's also shear stress going through the bone marrow, the liquid moving inside the bones, stimulating the cells. Of course, cardiac and neural have a stimulation that will improve the differentiation into terminal cells. And the proof is as well in microgravity. So what is the effect of the absence of those forces? Are we going to get exactly the same? And you might be too young to remember this. I'm sure all the students are, but I'm sure most of the speakers, we are not. And when we were young, we would see astronauts coming back from space, being unable to walk out of the space capsule. They will have to be trolleyed in wheelchairs because they do not have the bone density and the muscle to be able to walk on their own. And that is why you don't see this now, because now they have a gym in the space station. So they do have to follow an exercise regime to make sure that that stimulation continues regardless of the gravitational forces they are not exposed to. How do we mimic these forces with our systems? Well, with the bioreactors that I mentioned, we have different types of bioreactors. Perfusion bioreactor is our favorite. It helps to provide the shear stress to cells, but also it helps us to provide a homogeneous environment where we make sure that the concentration of nutrients and oxygen is homogeneous for as long as we have the perfusion bioreactor running with the cells. At the same time, we are able to remove waste, making sure that there is no damage to the cell culture because of an excess of waste in the culture. So perfusion bioreactors are very useful, the same as to seed, not only to keep the nutrients and the culture media flowing, but also to add the cells into these materials in a very controlled and homogeneous. You can see this is when we don't use perfusion seeding, and you can see some sporadic cells, whereas when we use perfusion to seed, you can see that the efficiency increases as well as the alignment and the number of cells. So perfusion bioreactors are very useful. The same as mechanical bioreactors, if we want to make sure that we are putting the same stress, a mechanical stress, we can compress, we can stretch, we can do different things with the mechanical bioreactors that we have. Last but not least, we have an electrical bioreactor. Of course, if we are developing and designing scaffolds with graphene because of the electrical and the conductivity properties, we want to be able to use those, and we need electrical bioreactor for that. Now, do we need any additional challenge? Is there any additional challenge? Well, yes, unfortunately, working with 3D models means that, for starters, you are working at a multi-scale, which means that your particles will range from the pico metrics into the macro scale. So if you think of all the molecules, all the genes, even genes and proteins expressed, all the way up to the cell size, and then to the scaffold size, and then to the hole that your patient has that you have to replace, you would see that there is a big scale difference between them. And that is the challenge. You cannot use one microscope to see everything. It would be great. It would be amazing if we had one microscope where we could see proteins, cells, and the biomaterials macro properties, but it's not. And that is why this multi-scale needs to be tackled with different imaging kits that we have. So some of them are the light sheet, for example, that will allow us to see both cells as well as graphene particles and flakes. And using these, we can follow up the uptake of graphene into our mesenchymal stem cells for some of the experiments. Other sources and other tools that we have includes, of course, the confocal. Imaging in 3D is quite challenging because when it's 2D, of course, you have the light going through your sample and you can identify the structures. When you have a 3D sample or construct, the light cannot go through. And that is why we use lasers to try and go as deep as possible, but it's never good enough. So the only real technique that we can use for this is microtomography, very similar to clinical tomography, but at a higher resolution. So to summarize this quick journey through biomaterials and bioreactors and bioimaging, we are working on smart biomaterials. We want to help the differentiation, proliferation, and homing activity, as well as make sure that there is some antimicrobial activity. We know that #1 cause for constructs and grafts to fail actually is infection. It's not even a mechanical failure of the graft, it is infection of the process of the surgery. We are also using bioreactor as dynamic 3D systems to enable to provide this stimulation. And we are coupling these with 3D imaging to overtake those challenges that we are facing. And with that, I just want to thank postdocs and students working on this, of course, collaborators and funding bodies. And thank you very much. And if you have any question, please feel free to type it in the chat.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hidalgo, for a very interesting talk that comes very nicely after that of Dr. Guo. And I wanted to ask Dr. Guo a question that we have in the chat before I give the word to Dr. Sasikumar. Dr. Guo, they ask us, in the use of cell therapy, how can you control that these pluripotent cells do not differentiate into cancer cells?
Yeah, this is a very good question. You know, iPS cells, we cannot using the iPS cells because we're using the iPS differentiated specialized cells. I could just give you an example, like so far in the clinical trial is already American FDA already approved. This is Cyanide Therapeutics from Australia. This company, can be used for the, the bone marrow transplantation. This side effect called GVHD. So this is already approved, can be used for the treatment. So the problem is if you make a differentiation into mesenchymal stem cells, mesenchymal stem cells already specialized. But iPS cells, if only one left, is a problem. iPS cell can limitless proliferate. So good question is, they were using the marker, to 100% sure no any iPS cell left.
Okay.
So this is a good question. Okay, I think this is apart from the the neuron therapy also is good for the in the future for the Alzheimer. Exactly. However, same thing, they already find the marker for to separate the iPS cells with the specialized cells. So this is the key. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wu. Dr. Hidalgo, we have a couple of questions for you. It says, very interesting talk. Congratulations. What has been the technique used to manufacture scaffolds that has shown the best results for application in cardiac tissue?
Thank you very much. For cardiac regeneration and scaffolds and constructs, there have been two main techniques. One is solvent casting, that it's very cheap, very cost effective, and of course very traditional. And that was previously because it allows to work with different polymers that 3D printing wouldn't. But as 3D printing is coming a long way now, we pretty much can use any material, metals for 3D printing, polymers, combination, composites, hydrogels, and very importantly, we can also do 3D bioprinting, where we are mixing cells in the ink to print. So 3D printing is probably the one that is taking over. We still need a bit more of resolution because we are not printing at the level with the as thin. The filaments are not as thin as we would like to control better shape. But I think we will be there pretty soon.
Thank you very much. And another one, what do you think the future of 3D imaging will look like in a few years? From Nida Shahedi.
Thank you. That's a challenging one because most of the imaging that they have MRI, of course, it needs to improve resolution as well, but is one of the potential candidates to take over microtomography and tomography. However, these two great techniques that really give you the full 3D puzzle, they need biomarkers for most of the applications. Microtomography, if you think of X-rays, is for dense materials. So if you want to image anything in the water window, what we call, which is water and organs and cells, you need to mark them with some heavy metals. And that is something we don't want because then it's a destructive technique. So there are some ways around, like using iron nanoparticles to tag. So it's not completely destructive, it's not toxic, but still we need to tag. So I think now is coming to the era where we need to move away to tagging our samples and our constructs to be able to image them.
Easier. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. We're almost at the end of the talk, so I'm gonna give the word to Dr. Shavarti Sashikumar. She is the Deputy Head of the Department of Engineering at Manchester Metropolitan. She is the India International Lead for the Faculty of Science and Engineering and developed several academic partnerships for the university with India. She's a mechanical engineer and has a doctorate in road vehicle crashworthiness. She has presented her research at various international conferences and published her work in academic journals. She teaches engineering and project management subjects, and her other research interests are in composite materials, international student experience, and equality, diversity, and inclusion in higher education. So Dr. Sashikumar, she will help us close this first session of this global summer school, and I welcome you.
Thank you very much, Marta, for the kind introduction. My colleague Araida will help me share the screen. Thank you, Araida. So you've heard about who I am, and I'm an engineer. I'm going to be taking a very different role here, and that role is actually to host you in a virtual conference dinner. So you've actually been with us. What would have we like to do with you? And show you around Manchester and a few exciting things to come along. So here we have next slide, please, Araida. Thank you. So the first evening of the conference, what we would like to do is take you for welcome drinks, and we want to take you to the iconic building of Manchester, which is our Manchester Town Hall, which was built in 1868. You can actually probably see it in the picture there. It's a beautifully made building. It's a masterpiece in Manchester, one of the few, and it was built in the 13th century Gothic style, but it was apparently the architect who built it, Alfred Waterhouse, has actually said that it is built suitable for the 19th century, and it's true. That's because it was modernized in early 19th century to include the heating systems and everything else, and it is very much a very modern place for people to hold their corporate and private celebrations. So the architect won the Royal Gold Medal on that. It is a Grade 1 listed building, and it is of national importance. That's what is meant by a Grade 1 listed building, and it's of exceptional architectural interest. So just to give you an idea, only 2.5% of the buildings in England are Grade 1 listed, and this is one of them. You will see a clock tower in the front, which has the clock tower itself, which has the bell, the Great Bell, which is called as the Great Bell, which was named in the honor of the one of our former mayors, Abel Haywood. The bell weighs 8 tons. So next, the main important thing I wanted to tell you is the Pims, which is the traditional drink of in Britain, especially for the summer months. So what it has is cucumber, fresh strawberry, lime, mint, and a shot of Pims, which is the drink that you're seeing there in the bottle. And it's topped up with lemonade and ice. Some nibbles will also be available along with the drinks. And this drink is traditionally taken during the times of Wimbledon when people are into sport, typically the summer months of England. So yeah, this is what we would like you to enjoy while you're here with us. Once the drinks and the reception is complete, we will take you to the conference dinner, which will happen at MOSI, which is the Museum of Science and Industry, which is also based in central Manchester. You can probably see the map. It's walkable distance, and on your way from Albert Square, where the town hall is, to MOSI, you will see a few more buildings of some exquisite architecture. So here, you probably know Manchester is the city of Industrial Revolution. This is where it all started from, and we would like to show you the museum itself. Can you take me to the next slide, please? Raida. So on the left side, where you see the aeroplane, under the wing, that's the foyer of the museum. Here you have exhibits from the textiles, railways, and industrial chemistry, etc. in this particular museum. It's again a place of importance and visitor attraction in Manchester. And on the right side, you see the conference venue where the dinner will be held. And at the bottom, if you can see the blue screen, that is the baby. We call it the baby, but that is actually the first computer that was built in 1948 to store and run a program. So that happens to be the backdrop of our dinner, of a virtual dinner. And when you're here in person with us in future, when travel is all available, then we'd expect that this is the sort of a scenery we can put you in, and we can have a dinner together. So the next slide, please, Raida. Thank you. So the menu, we'd like to treat you to the British food. On the left, you see asparagus wrapped in bacon, and that's the starter. And then on the right is the lamb shank with mashed potato. And there are some mushrooms in that as well. So that's for the meat eaters. And for the vegetarian lovers, we have the option of roasted pepper and tomato soup. You can see some courgettes and spring onions lightly topping the bowl of soup. And then on the right, as the main course, you have the barley, couscous, roast vegetables salad with rocket. And then you have halloumi for those who are cheese lovers. And for those who like the vegetarian version of the meat, it is the corn. There are also sun-dried tomatoes, cashew nuts, and aubergine. So this is the main course. Coming to our the desserts. So you've got the sticky toffee pudding, which is again a traditional national dish in England. Then you have the Eton mess, as you see on the top, with strawberries and meringue and everything in it. And followed by the cheese platter with biscuits and tea, coffee, as you fancy and what you would like. And then the mint chocolate at the right bottom. The mint chocolate is the after eight mint chocolate, again, very popular and very much a part of a formal dinner in England. So this is what we propose for our dinner together. And then if the excitement doesn't stop, then we would take you to the Hilton Hotel. It's called as the Beaton Tower. And this is also very much walkable distance from the Mersey. So if you see there, this is the 23rd floor of our of this building, one of the tallest buildings in Manchester. And then you have the Cloud 23, the bar and restaurant. You're seeing that as a second picture, just in the middle on the top. And a lovely view of Manchester from there, and you have the night view as well on the extreme right side. And after this, you can move to the pub crawl. I don't know if you're aware of it. It's basically moving from one pub to the other and tasting a few drinks, and it's an excellent way of getting to know the local culture, meeting different people. And Manchester is it has quite a bit of international population, so it's a very popular destination for students as well. So we hope that the pub crawl will actually give you an opportunity to meet with students from all over the world, and nightlife, and gives you a flavor of the nightlife in the UK as well. So you may be probably wondering, and after dinner, it's probably 8-9 o'clock, and then how you're still going to be outside. Don't worry about it. This time of the year, you'll have sunshine right up till 10:30 at night. So it's very long days, and at most times we see sunny days. So that's what we expect. And that's your pub crawl. And if you fancy some dancing, then there are some nightclubs and dance floors open for you as well. So that is what we intend to do for the virtual conference dinner. I hope that was interesting and gave you a flavor of what it would be like if you were here with us in Manchester.
Thank you very much. It made me really hungry to look at all that food. It was lovely. Thank you very much.
No
And
problem,
I want to thank you again, and I thank everybody, and remind you that Dr. Hidalgo has something for you after this. So she will be asking you to share your thoughts on this first session of the Global Summer School. So please stick around and follow her instructions. Here she is.
Thank you very much. Thank you for sticking with us for the whole duration. I hope that you enjoy both the cultural and the scientific talks. And we're really interested in knowing what you think, as I mentioned at the beginning. So following my colleague, Jim, which I already asked you to use Menti as part of a very interactive session, I'm going to ask you to use Vivox. So if you have another device, a tablet, a phone, you're in the computer, or if you are in the computer, can I ask you to open another tab, please, and then type vivox.app. So VEVOX.app, vivox.app. And once you are in there, they're going to, again, to ask you for the number of the ID of the session. And the session is 178384041. Those are the 9 numbers that you need to dial, to include, depending where you are. And I'm going to go back, so I'll give you a bit more time so everybody gets to open Vivox or to have another app, another tab open. And the ID is 178384041. I should have practiced my numbers in Italian, and I could tell you the numbers in Italian and Spanish, but I didn't remember that. So it's not difficult even from English, but yeah, 178384041. Hopefully we're having lots of of delegates joining in. And what I want to ask first is, which institution are you from? Are you from any of the 4 institutions that we have? Or are you from any other? Because we are conscious that fortunately we have friends in other countries and other institutions, and we try to invite as many as possible. So do join us and tell us, where are you from? Are you from Juriquilla, UPIBI, Novara, Manchester Met, or any other? I can see we have 21 responses, 22, yay! We have more people joining us. Do join so we get to know more about you. So, okay, we're going to close now and we are going to know what are the results. So that's good. Half of the ones responding. I imagine, as usual, there might be others busy and not taking on the poll, but hopefully you can still join at any point. So don't worry if you didn't answer the first one. So it's really good spread. And we also have from other institutions. Now, next one, which country are you from? And that is a one word that we want you to type. Which country are you from? And we're expecting to see a big contingent from Mexico, but just type the country you are from, the country you are joining us from, the country where your institution is based. Excellent. We can see that now we have 27 part of our survey. That's really good, because the more we have, the more comments we have to improve and make sure that next year and next sessions, because the feedback is quite immediate, next sessions respond. So we got 28 and 24 have responded. Come on, we have 3 more before we close this question. Will they do it on time? One more, last one. Oh, we got a last minute 29. That's great. Come on, guys, 2 more. Tell us, where are you from? And we're going to close in 3, 2, 1, and closing that question. And we're going to see, I'm hoping no big Mexico, Arabia, Chihuahua, excellent, Saudi, brilliant. That's really good. That's a really good mix of, I imagine that we have something in blue and we cannot see those, but we'll come back to you later on. Now, next one, which field will describe best the course that you are taking in university, or the field that you work on? Is it medicine? Is it biotechnology? Is it bioengineering, biomedicine, neurosciences, genetics, orthosis and reconstructive, or any other? What is your field? Which from these fits the best? I'm hoping that I am capturing the most that we are expecting from, but of course there might be some other that we are not having. So we're having 31 respondents now, which is great. We keep increasing our numbers, and let's have 5 more seconds for the ones that I still have to decide. They cannot decide. They want to tick everything, and it's only one option. Okay, 3, 2, 1, and closing. And who is going to be the winner here? Wow, biotechnology. Well, no questions. If we have a lot of UPIBI students, I imagine that's why we have such a strong biotechnology. But bioengineering, of course, that's a strong part. Biomedicine and other. That's interesting. Thank you very much. Now, just so we know what's a bit of the population, the demographics of our population, which gender do you are you, female, male, or prefer not to say, equally valid? So that's just so we know who is engaging the more with these sessions and with this survey as well. So I can see now 35, we keep increasing, great. We still got a couple of questions, so do join in if you still have time. So 35, that's great, almost there. We got 30, we need 5 more, 4 more, 3, and it's gonna close in 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1, and closing. And do we have a gender balance? No gender balance. It's slightly more towards female. we try to have gender balance, but the speakers, but you'll see through the week. Right, next one. Which session did you enjoy today the most? Was it the cultural sessions? Were they the scientific sessions that you prefer, or were they equal? Was one that you said, oh, I'd rather do the cultural than the scientific? That was the highlight. Or you said the scientific, really, I'm not bothered about the culture, Or do you think equally the same? They both made a really good case of having a global summer school. What do you think? We are sticking with those 35 participants. Hopefully we'll have some more joining us. 36, yay! We got an extra one. Well done. And we are about to close in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1, and closing. Which ones did you enjoy the most? Well, equally, and more than 60% said that they were equally important for you, which is really useful feedback for us, guys. Thank you very much, because that means that it's worth it to put on this additional content for you. Right, next one. What was the impact of these sessions to you? So if you're not from today's hosting country, which means if you are not from the UK, would you be more inclined to travel if you never thought before of traveling to the UK after seeing how beautiful Manchester is, how welcoming we will be when you come to visit us? Are you more inclined to come? Yes or no? That's an easy one, and I will not hold it against you. I will not take it personal. Don't worry if you say no, even with all the fabulous food and venues and things you can do. Not really, not now. And that, of course, is an ideal scenario. Don't think of COVID, because then, of course, nobody's going to travel. But just ideal scenario. After hearing what Manchester can offer, would you come and join us? Do you want to come for an exchange, maybe? Maybe you can have as part of your project or your course. We have 35. We're waiting for 4 more. I'm going to close in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2. Come on, guys. We need 4 more. 2, 1, and closing. Would you come to Manchester? Yay! I think we sold Manchester pretty well, didn't we? It's a great city. It's fun. It's lots of fun, regardless of what you want to do. That's good. Now, still on that part of, if you do not speak English as your first language, of course, are you more inclined to learn it in the future? Do you think will be useful? That is a bit tricky, of course, because with English, you are listening to this in English. So you do speak English at a really good level. So it's more about improving your level of English. Of course, when you do Spanish for Mexico and Italian, you might not speak any of these, but for English, we know already you do. But would you try to improve your English? Would you still work on this? And it looks like we've lost 2 respondents. We only have 34 now. There's only 1 more question, I promise, I think. 1 or 2 maybe. But would you improve your English if you are, or do you feel happy and you think that's good enough to be able to navigate events and, of course, work or projects if you want to come? I'm going to close in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1, and closing. Let's see what you think. Yes, you still want to improve. That's really good. That tells us that you're very driven and you want to keep improving, and continuing professional development is very important in any profession. Okay, the one before the last one. Would you be interested in participating in other international summer schools? If you were going to be offered, would you prefer only face-to-face, only online? Either you wouldn't mind, one or another is the same, or just none. You do not want to do any other summer school. You had enough with today. And now we have, from our 34 responses, let's say, if they really want to go back to the face-to-face format, they want to do only virtual. Of course, it's more flexible. You don't mind, because either would be enriching, or you think, no, you're at the point where you don't need summer schools. Maybe you need another exchange method or strategy. Okay, we have 6 more that still need to answer. I'm going to close in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1, and closing. And what do we have here? Actually, as half of you said that either would be really good, either online. No one said no, which is always good to see. And the very last one is, what did you enjoy the most? Now, this is not one word. This could be a phrase or many words. And very importantly, responses will not show. I should have said actually at the beginning, all this information is completely anonymized. We will not know who responded. Well, obviously, we will know that you're from Mexico, but that's as far as we will go. We will not be able to match any information. We're not interested. We just want the numbers. So this will not show at all. These will go into our database so we can use them to improve our sessions. What did you enjoy the most? Tell us all the things that you enjoy, what you really appreciate. What are the things you want to see again? Equally, if there's something that you think can be improved, do let us know. It's great to have good feedback and positive feedback, but is there something that you think actually just a small tweak could improve the session or could improve the summer school? Let's do that. So please do go along. And I'm going to give a little bit longer for this one, of course, because you have to type. If you're on the phone, and if you are a student and a young generation, you might be really quick at using the thumbs and auto-predicting text. So you might not need as much. Maybe if you're in the keyboard, you might need slightly more. There's no auto-prediction, but do let us know what you think. Even if it's one word, if it's just one thing, that's good enough equally. If you want to tell us a lot of things, we will very much welcome all the comments that you have on the summer school. And this is because, as you know, the summer school is running Monday, which was today, Tuesday, tomorrow with Ines Juriquilla, Wednesday with UPO Novara, and Thursday, last day with UPB Mexico. So we still have many opportunities to improve and to take on the good feedback and the good comments also to improve. So let us know. Let us know. I don't want to close yet because I know you are typing away and we are going to wait for you. So all that, as I said, we are not going to show it on the screen right now. That is going to go into the database, anonymized, and we're just going to get a list of random comments, what you said you enjoy and what you said maybe that we could improve. I can see responses are still increasing. We've got 20. And I want to give you an extra minute, but obviously for those that have finished, that have submitted your response, I want to say thank you very much for joining us. I know that the whole team from Manchester Metropolitan, please let me share with you that we were very much looking forward to this event. It's slightly strange. We cannot see faces. We would love to see students. And if you ask any academic, any lecturer, any professor, we really miss students. And it would have been great to have you all in Zoom and being able to turn on cameras. But we were expecting a high number of students and we didn't want to jeopardize Zoom or the connection. And that is why we are broadcasting through Facebook and YouTube Live. But so I think it's the moment to close now. I'm going to go 5 more seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. And that is going to conclude so the data is captured, as you can see. And that is the end of today's sessions. Thank you very much for joining. We hope that you join us tomorrow for Ines Juriquilla's Day. I know I've used in the program, as any of the other days, look very, very interesting. And of course, another opportunity to know about another country if you're not familiar with Mexican culture. And even if you are, you might not be familiar with the culture from Juriquilla. So there might be some surprises in stock for you. Thank you very much, Professor Giordano. It's all yours.